Pompey was murdered in Egypt in 48 BC. Caesar was now preeminent over Rome, attracting the bitter enmity of many aristocrats. He was granted many offices and honors. In just 5 years, he held 4 consulships, 2 ordinary dictatorships, and 2 special dictatorships, one for 10 years and another for perpetuity. He was murdered in 44 BC, on the Ides of March by the Liberatres. 56, Octavian and the Second Triumvirate. The Battle of Actium, by Lorenzo Castro, painted 1672, National Maritime Museum, London. Caesar's assassination caused political and social turmoil in Rome. Without the dictator's leadership, the city was ruled by his friend and colleague, Marcus Antonius. Soon afterward, Octavius, whom Caesar adopted through his will, arrived in Rome. Octavian. Historians regard Octavius as Octavian due to the Roman naming conventions, tried to align himself with the Caesarian faction. In 43 BC, along with Antony and Marcus Aemilius Lepidus, Caesar's best friend, 57, he legally established the Second Triumvirate. This alliance would last for 5 years. Upon its formation 300 senators were executed, and their property was confiscated, due to their supposed support for the Liberatres. 58. In 42 BC, the Senate deified Caesar as Divus Iulius. Octavian thus became Divi Filius. 59. The son of the deified. In the same year, Octavian and Antony defeated both Caesar's assassins and the leaders of the Liberatres, Marcus Junius Brutus and Gaius Cassius Longinus, in the Battle of Philippi. The Second Triumvirate was marked by the proscriptions of many senators and equites. After a revolt led by Antony's brother Lucius Antonius, more than 300 senators and equites involved were executed on the anniversary of the Ides of March, although Lucius was spared. 60. The Triumvirate proscribed several important men, including Cicero, whom Antony hated, winking sad smiley. 61. Quintus Tullius Cicero, the younger brother of the orator, and Lucius Julius Caesar, cousin and friend of the acclaimed general, for his support of Cicero. However, Lucius was pardoned, perhaps because his sister Julia had intervened for him. 62. The Triumvirate divided the empire among the triumvirs. Lepidus was given charge of Africa, Antony, the eastern provinces, and Octavian remained in Italia and controlled Hispania and Gaul. The Second Triumvirate expired in 38 BC but was renewed for 5 more years. However, the relationship between Octavian and Antony had deteriorated, and Lepidus was forced to retire in 36 BC after betraying Octavian in Sicily. By the end of the Triumvirate, Antony was living in Ptolemaic Egypt, an independent and rich kingdom ruled by his lover Cleopatra. 7. Antony's affair with Cleopatra was seen as an act of treason, since she was queen of another country. Additionally, Antony adopted a lifestyle considered too extravagant and Hellenistic for a Roman statesman. 63. Following Antony's donations of Alexandria, which gave to Cleopatra the title of Queen of Kings, and to Antony's and Cleopatra's children the regal titles to the newly conquered eastern territories, war between Octavian and Antony broke out. Octavian annihilated Egyptian forces in the Battle of Actium in 31 BC. Antony and Cleopatra committed suicide. Now Egypt was conquered by the Roman Empire, and for the Romans, a new era had begun. Empire the Principate. In 27 BC and at the age of 36, Octavian was the sole Roman leader. In that year, he took the name Augustus. That event is usually taken by historians as the beginning of Roman Empire, although Rome was an imperial state since 146 BC, when Carthage was razed by Scipio Aemilianus and Greece was conquered by Lucius Mummius. Officially, the government was republican, but Augustus assumed absolute powers. 64-65. His reform of the government brought about a 2-century period colloquially referred to by Romans as the Pax Romana. Julio-Claudian dynasty. The Julio-Claudian dynasty was established by Augustus. The emperors of this dynasty were Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius and Nero. The dynasty is so called due to the gens Julia, family of Augustus, and the gens Claudia, family of Tiberius. The Julio-Claudians started the destruction of republican values, but on the other hand, they boosted Rome's status as the central power in the Mediterranean region. 66. While Caligula and Nero are usually remembered in popular culture as dysfunctional emperors, Augustus and Claudius are remembered as emperors who were successful in politics and the military. This dynasty instituted imperial tradition in Rome, 67, and frustrated any attempt to re-establish a republic. 68. Augustus. The Augustus of Prima Porta, 1st century AD, depicting Augustus, the first Roman Emperor Augustus, R27 BC AD 14, gathered almost all the republican powers under his official title, Princeps. He had the powers of consul, Princeps Senatus, Aedile Censor and Tribune, including Tribunician Sacrosanctity. 69. This was the Basophone Emperor's power. Augustus also styled himself as Imperator Gaius Julius Caesar Divi Filius, Commander Gaius Julius Caesar, son of the deified one. With this title he not only boasted his familial link to deified Julius Caesar, but theus of imperator signified a permanent link to the Roman tradition of victory. He also diminished the political influence of the senatorial class by boosting the equestrian class. The senators lost their right to rule certain provinces, like Egypt, since the governor of that province was directly nominated by the emperor. The creation of the Praetorian Guard and his reforms in the military, creating a standing army with a fixed size of 28 legions, ensured his total control over Thermae. 70. Compared with the Second Triumvirate's epoch, Augustus' reign as Princeps was very peaceful. This peace and wealth, obtained from the agrarian province of Egypt, 71, led the people and the nobles of Rome to support Augustus, increasing his strength in political affairs. 72. Augustus was absent at battles. His generals were responsible for the field command, gaining such commanders as Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa, Nero Claudius Drusus and Germanicus much respect from the populace and the legions. Augustus intended to extend the Roman Empire to the whole known world, and in his reign, Rome conquered Cantabria, Aquitania Raetia, Dalmatia, Illyricum and Pannonia. 73. Under Augustus' reign, Roman literature grew steadily in what is known as the Golden Age of Latin literature. Poets like Virgil, Horace, Ovid and Rufus developed a rich literature, and were close friends of Augustus. Along with Maecenas, he sponsored patriotic poems, as Virgil's epic Aeneid, and also historiographical works, like those of Livy. The works of this literary age lasted through Roman times, and are classics. Augustus also continued the changes to the calendar promoted by Caesar, and the month of August is named after him. 74. Augustus brought a peaceful and thriving era to Rome, known as Pax Augusta or Pax Romana. Augustus died in 14 AD, but the empire's glory continued after his era. From Tiberius to Nero. Extent of the Roman Empire under Augustus. The low legend represents the extent of the Republic in 31 BC. The shades of green represent gradually conquered territories under the reign of Augustus, and pink areas on the map represent client states. Areas under Roman control shown here were subject to change even during Augustus' reign, especially in Germania. The Julio-Claudians continued to rule Rome after Augustus' death and remained in power until the death of Nero in 68 AD. 75. Augustus' favorites to succeed him were already dead in his senescence. His nephew Marcellus died in 23 BC, his friend and military commander Agrippa in 12 BC, and his grandson Gaius Caesar in 4 AD. Influenced by his wife, Livia Drusilla, Augustus appointed her son from another marriage, Tiberius, as his heir. 76. The Senate agreed with the succession, and granted to Tiberius the same titles and honors once granted to Augustus, the title of Princeps and Pater Patriae, and the civic crown. However, Tiberius was not an enthusiast for political affairs. After agreement with the Senate, he retired to Capri in 26 AD, 77, and left control of the city of Rome in the hands of the Praetorian prefect Sejanus, until 31 AD, and Macro, from 31 to 37 AD. Tiberius was regarded as an evil and melancholic man, who may have ordered the murder of his relatives, the popular general Germanicus in 19 AD, 78, and his own son Drusus Julius Caesar in 23 AD. 78. Tiberius died, or was killed, 78, in 37 AD. The male line of the Julio Claudians was limited to Tiberius' nephew Claudius, his grandson Tiberius Gemellus, and his grandnephew Caligula. As Gemellus was still a child, Caligula was chosen to rule the empire. He was a popular leader in the first half of his reign, but became a crude and insane tyrant in his years controlling government. 79. Suetonius states that he committed incest with his sisters, killed some men just for amusement, and nominated a horse for a consulship. 80. The Praetorian Guard murdered Caligula 4 years after the death of Tiberius, 81, and, with belated support from the senators, proclaimed his uncle Claudius as the new emperor. 82. Claudius was not as authoritarian as Tiberius and Caligula. Claudius conquered Lycia and Thrace. His most important deed was the beginning of the conquest of Britannia. 83. Claudius was poisoned by his wife, Agrippina the Younger, in 54 AD. 84. His heir was Nero, son of Agrippina and her former husband, since Claudius' son Britannicus had not reached manhood upon his father's death. Nero sent his general, Suetonius Paulinus, to invade modern-day Wales, where he encountered stiff resistance. The Celts there were independent, tough and resistant to tax collectors, and fought Paulinus, as he battled his way across from east to west. It took him a long time to reach the northwest coast, and in 60 AD he finally crossed the Menai Strait to the sacred island of Mona, Anglesey, the last stronghold of the Druids. 85. His soldiers attacked Highland and massacred the Druids, men, women and children. 86. Destroyed the shrine and the sacred groves, and threw many of the sacred standing stones into the sea. While Paulinus and his troops were massacring Druids in Mona, the tribes of modern-day East Anglia staged a revolt led by Queen Boadicea of the Iceni. 87. The rebels sacked and burned Camulodunum, Londinium and Verulamium, modern-day Colchester, London and Street Albans respectively, before they were crushed by Paulinus. 88. Boadicea, like Cleopatra before her, committed suicide to avoid the disgrace of being paraded in triumph in Rome. 89. The fault of Nero in this rebellion is debatable, but was certainly an impact, both positive and negative, upon the prestige of his regime. Nero is widely known as the first persecutor of Christians, and for the Great Fire of Rome, rumored to have been started by the emperor himself. 90. In 59 AD he murdered his mother, and in 62 AD, his wife Claudia Octavia. Never very stable, he allowed his advisors to run the government while he slid into debauchery, excess, and madness. He was married 3 times, and had numerous affairs with both men and women, and, according to some rumors, even his mother. A conspiracy against Nero in 65 AD under Calpurnius Piso failed, but in 68 AD the armies under Julius Vindex in Gaul and Servius Sulpicius Galba in modern-day Spain revolted. Deserted with Praetorian guards and condemned to death by the Senate, Nero killed himself. 91. Flavian dynasty. Bust of Vespasian, founder of the Flavian dynasty. The Flavians were the second dynasty to rule Rome. 92. By 68 AD, the year of Nero's death, there was no chance of a return to the Roman Republic, and so a new emperor had to arise. After the turmoil in the year of the four emperors, Titus Flavius Vespasianus, anglicized as Vespasian, took control of the empire and established a new dynasty. Under the Flavians, Rome continued its expansion, and the state remained secure. 93. Under Trajan, the Roman Empire reached the peak of its territorial expansion. 94. Rome's dominion now spanned 5.0 million square kilometers, 1.9 million square miles. 2. The most significant military campaign undertaken during the Flavian period was siege and destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD by Titus. The destruction of the city was the culmination of the Roman campaign in Judea following the Jewish uprising of 66 AD. The Second Temple was completely demolished, after which Titus' soldiers proclaimed him imperator in honor of the victory. Jerusalem was sacked and much of the population killed or dispersed. Josephus claims that 1,100,000 people were killed during the siege, of whom a majority were Jewish. 95. 97,000 were captured and enslaved, including Simon Bar-Jonah and John of Giscala. Many fled to areas around the Mediterranean. Titus reportedly refused to accept a wreath of victory, as there was no merit in vanquishing people forsaken by their own god. Vespasian. Vespasian had been a general under Claudius and Nero. He fought as a commander in the First Jewish-Roman War along with his son Titus. Following the turmoil of the year of the four emperors, in 69 AD, four emperors were enthroned in turn: Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and, lastly, Vespasian, who crushed Vitellius' forces and became emperor. 96. He reconstructed many buildings which were uncompleted, like a statue of Apollo and the temple of Divus Claudius, the deified Claudius, both initiated by Nero. Buildings destroyed by the Great Fire of Rome were rebuilt, and he revitalized the capital. Vespasian also started the construction of the Flavian Amphitheatre, more commonly known as the Colosseum. 96. The historians Josephus and Pliny the Elder wrote their works during Vespasian's reign. Vespasian was Josephus' sponsor, and Pliny dedicated his Naturalis Historia to Titus, son of Vespasian. Vespasian sent legions to defend the eastern frontier in Cappadocia, extended the occupation in Britannia, modern-day England, Wales and southern Scotland, and reformed the tax system. He died in 79 AD. Titus and Domitian. Titus became emperor in 79. He finished the Flavian Amphitheatre, using war spoils from the First Jewish-Roman War, and hosted victory games that lasted for 100 days. These games included gladiatorial combats, horse races and a sensational mock naval battle on the flooded grounds of the Colosseum. 97. Titus died of fever in 81 AD, and was succeeded by his brother Domitian. As emperor, Domitian showed the characteristics of a tyrant. 98. He ruled for 15 years, during which time he acquired a reputation for self-promotion as a living god. He constructed at least 2 temples in honor of Jupiter, the supreme deity in Roman religion. 99. He was murdered following a plot within his own household. Nerva Antonine dynasty. The Roman Empire reached its greatest extent under Trajan in AD 117. Following Domitian's murder, the Senate rapidly appointed Nerva as emperor. Nerva had noble ancestry, and he had served as an advisor to Nero and the Flavians. His rule restored many of the traditional liberties of Rome's upper classes, which Domitian had overridden. 40–100. The Nerva Antonine dynasty from 96 AD to 100